Sister disappears for years, then breaks into parents' house to steal inheritance after dad passes away and leaves property to other daughter and will. I, 33F, have been going through a lot these days. I recently lost my dad, and I have an ailing mom who has been recently diagnosed with a heart problem. I'm a single mom of a 3-year-old toddler. My husband found solace in his colleague when I was pregnant. I'm not only dealing with all this emotionally, but also financially. Though my ex-husband provides child support, it covers only the basic requirements like play school fees and food. You know how kids need a lot more than these never-ending demands for toys, outings, and their endless cravings for ice creams and candies cost a bomb. Amidst all these, I'm facing the emotional turmoil of losing my backbone, my dad a few months ago, and now my mom is diagnosed with heart disease. I don't have anyone else to lean on for my emotional support. A friend suggested this place to vent out, so kindly don't mind if I just ramble my heart out. I was still dealing with all this turmoil somehow, but my sister thinks my problems are not enough and creates a ruckus in my life. My elder sister, I'll call her Karen, 38F, has been out of the family dynamics for the last 15 years. She left the house for her college, and since then, she has been in limited contact with all of us. She got a job downtown, and then married someone there. She didn't even introduce her fiancé to our parents. My parents and I were just invited to the wedding as guests. Even at the wedding, she barely spoke to us. She was all busy talking to her friends and in-laws. For the brief moments when she did speak to us, it was all about how rich and classy her in-laws were. That's it. I think it's been 10 years of her marriage, and she has hardly checked upon us. She never brought her husband to our house when she was pregnant with her first daughter. We were all so happy for her and wanted to visit her, but she said she was busy. When her daughter was born, she informed us after 10 days as a formality to attend her baptism. My parents were upset, but they still attended the ceremony since she was their first granddaughter. I didn't go at that time, and since then, she has made an opinion about me that I was egoistic. It wasn't ego at all. She never loved me. She never treated me like a sister. I was no more than just a stranger to her. She was always so engrossed in her life that she never treated us as a family. We were only a place for her to vent out. After her marriage, whenever she called Mom, it was always to rant about her new house, new car, and stuff like that. Earlier, it was her work. She was always busy at the office during the initial years of her marriage. Mom invited her and her husband on several occasions, but she always gave the reason that they were busy. However, they didn't seem busy on social media. You could see their party pictures on almost all weekends. Once I said this, she was like, "Well, we party at our house or at places close to our house." I replied, "You guys live in the countryside." She said, "Yeah, but 2 hours is long for us busy people." Sure. We stopped inviting her again after her kids. My parents tried to reconcile the bond for the sake of their grandchildren. They asked her to visit with her children, but she never turned up. It was always like, my children would get sick in the 2-hour drive. It's dusty there, and whatnot. We let her be and didn't bother her. Dad was ill for a long time, but she barely visited him. Mom asked her several times in the last few years to visit Dad, but she always had an excuse. Even during his last days, Dad expressed his wish to have one meal together with all of us as a family. She said she would come, but at the last moment, she ditched. Now that Dad is gone, and she got to know that he left a substantial inheritance for us, she is after us for the property division. Before that, when Dad was hospitalized for the last time, the doctor said that it was almost time. I called all my close uncles, aunts, and family members, and also my sister. Most of the people were able to make it and speak to Dad for the final time, but his own daughter arrived the next day after Dad was gone. It is unimaginable how disappointed my father would have been in his last moment when she arrived and saw that Dad was gone and we were surrounded by friends and relatives. She acted like she was crying and mourning the loss, but in reality, all of us knew that it was fake. I wanted to shut her up and throw her out of the house, but no matter what, she was Dad's daughter, and I couldn't do anything about it. Immediately after the funeral, she was about to leave when she saw the lawyer coming. She smirked and said, "Oh, did Dad have anything substantial to make a will?" That was such a disgusting comment. Dad wasn't rich. He earned decently, but gave everything he could within his means. Besides, our parents gave us a happy childhood and a happy home. But my sister always had a thing for money. Growing up, I've always seen her complaining about money problems. She always used to compare our lifestyle to those of rich kids. She always wanted what her rich friends had. After completing school, she was adamant about studying in a city college and not staying in the town anymore. Our parents tried to make her understand the money problem, but she was ready to run away if they didn't agree. Dad had to mortgage his farmland to provide for her college fees, and it took him many years and several compromises to pay off his debts. I'm not giving these details to portray her as any villain. She's exactly what I'm saying and even more. If I have to ramble about her selfishness, this post would become a book. The lawyer sat us down and read the will. The house goes to Mom, and it would be in her will that Dad had $100,000 in savings, which goes to Karen, and I get the farmland and the windmill. Karen was shocked at this. She was like, "Wasn't that farmland sold off? And when did Dad get into the windmill thing?" The lawyer gave a strange look at her ignorance. Mom gestured for her to discuss these matters after the will reading session, but she insisted on getting the details right away. Mom requested the lawyer to excuse us. Karen cried foul play, saying that Dad was unfair in his property division. She ranted about how she was never kept in the loop about Dad's business investments. The way she was ranting at Mom, I wanted to give it back to her, but that would mean she attacking me directly. She clearly had a problem with Dad's substantial property coming to me. Not that I was scared of her, but a face-off with her was the last thing I wanted to do on my dad's funeral day. Mom tried to explain to her about the farmland and the windmill, but she was not letting her speak. Mom lost her cool and shouted at her that she was the one who had cut down communication with us, and now she can't blame us for not keeping her updated with our lives. No matter how hard Mom tried to make her understand, she kept saying that Mom and Dad were biased towards me. She went so far as to say that I was leeching on my parents for their money because I had no husband and a low-paying teaching job at a community school. I felt so sick and disgusted at her mean comments and couldn't hold back myself. I told her, if there's anyone who's selfish here, it is she. She was the one who threw Dad into debt, and it took him years to recover. In return, she never checked on him and didn't even visit him during his last days. She was partially right about selling the farmland. Dad had mortgaged the land for her college fees, and for many years, he was unable to pay off the loan. When she started earning well, Dad asked her to contribute to the loan, but she denied it and said, as a father, he should bear that. Dad had defaulted on a few payments, and the situation got so severe that Dad was on the verge of paying off the loan by selling the farmland. Mom called Karen several times asking for help, but she denied it, saying she was not earning enough to contribute and was like, sell off the land. What good is it? Given the right time, Dad got help from his friend, who saved us the farmland. I was also affected by this crisis. You see, I had started working from a very early age. I took up odd jobs during my time off from school, working at orchards and farms on an hourly basis. By the time I graduated from school, I had enough savings to bear my college fees. But with this crisis kicking in, I had to let go of my savings for household expenses. Of course, I cannot starve and let my parents starve and use that money to go to college. I had to drop out for a couple of years until our finances stabilized. That's when I joined a daycare, where I continued to work during my college. After college, I joined a community school. I think 5 to 6 years back, there was a government windmill project introduced in our locality for the farmers. They helped us install the windmill on our land, and in return, the government paid us rent for using our land. We could sell the power generated from it, and in exchange, we had to take care of the maintenance and run it. Dad's farmland was also benefited through the scheme that helped Dad bounce back his financial status. Karen was not happy with the will because she knew the revenue generated through windmills and farm, and she just couldn't bear to see that Dad had willed the windmill to me. She just stormed out of the house, threatening me and Mom that she would sue us for forging Dad's will. Since then, she has been threatening all of us, including the lawyer, that she would file a forgery case against all of us. We know her allegations are not true, but our concern is that if she files for a case and until the case is settled, the work would halt and rip us off our livelihood. Though I work at the school, Mom is dependent on the money generated through the farm. Also, we don't have enough money to fight a court case. Mom has been stressing a lot over this, and in her recent checkup, she is diagnosed with a heart problem. Sorry for rambling on this page, but I really need to vent out. Update 1. I cannot thank you guys enough for the love and support I got on my post. Honestly, I didn't expect it to blow up. I was just here to ventilate because I had no one to share my misery in such detail. So, 2 months have passed since Dad's demise, and we were living in constant fear of getting falsely framed by Karen. Meanwhile, Dad's lawyer suggested that we start the paperwork for the name transfer. We went ahead with his suggestion. One night, I got an emergency call from Mom. Her voice was trembling. She asked me to immediately come home. I asked her if she was fine. She said yes, but asked me to come over immediately. I got scared. Honestly, I thought it was her health because she was breathing heavily. I couldn't leave my son alone at night, so I tucked him into the back seat of the car while he was still asleep and drove off. I reached Mom's house to find neighbors gathered around, police sirens echoing in the neighborhood, and the house was guarded with barricades. I rushed inside, crying. I thought something had happened to my mom, but I found her on the front porch, and one of the cops pacified her. I hugged her tightly and informed the cops about my mom's heart problems, saying that she needed some time to calm down before she could give a statement. The cops went to take the statement from the neighbors, and then I got to know the entire story. It was that my sister had broken into the house from the backyard. When Mom was asleep, she had fallen asleep on the couch while watching TV. She was woken up by someone's footsteps going into her room with a flickering torchlight. She thought there was a burglar in the house, so she pretended to be asleep and didn't move. When she was sure that the burglar was inside the room, Mom swiftly went outside the house and alerted the neighbor, who called the cops. The neighbor also bolted the house from the outside to trap the burglar inside. When the cops arrived and unlocked the door, they found my sister trying to escape through the back door. When she saw the cops, she pretended that she was just walking in the garden, saying, "It's my mom's house, and I was just walking on the lawn." Now, Mom was in a dilemma whether to report Karen or not. Karen was detained inside the bedroom. Mom and I went to speak to her. She said she was there to meet Mom, but it was evident that she was searching for something in the closet because it was all messed up. I wanted Mom to report, but then it was her choice. Mom told the cops that she didn't want to report. They still took Karen's details and warned her not to sneak inside the house again. They were suspicious of her because neighbors confirmed her sneaking. After the cops left, we asked her again. She was like, "You guys have forged Dad's will. How could you get everything?" She couldn't find the papers in the closet. Thank God it was with our lawyer for the paperwork. We didn't tell her where the will was. She asked Mom about it, and Mom said it was none of her business. She looked at me and said, "Then it must be at this bitch's house. She's the one who manipulated you both emotionally and took my share of the property." I wanted to smack her, but before I could say anything, Mom yelled at her for her language and reminded her that she was the one who had cut off all of us from her lives, and now she has to suffer. It went on for an hour, where Mom spoke out everything she had in her heart. Karen tried to be defensive, but Mom didn't let her overpower. When she had nothing else to say, she insisted Mom give the house to her as fair play. Mom asked her to leave the house, but she was adamant in her demands and asked Mom to promise that she would give the house to her because Dad already gave me enough. My son woke up and headed home, but before leaving, I dared Karen not to even think of breaking into my house because I would not shy away from reporting her and getting her arrested. She was calling me all sorts of names, but I didn't give in to her provocations and left. She even followed me outside the house, cursing me on top of her voice. She stopped when someone from the neighborhood yelled from their window, threatening to call the cops on her the next morning. I called Mom to check on her. Mom said that after I left, Karen tried to emotionally manipulate her. She was sobbing and complaining about how my parents always loved me and favored me more than her, and that's why she left the town and settled in the city. She insisted Mom promised that she would give her the house. Mom said she didn't commit anything but is thinking of creating a will right away to avoid any conflict in the future. She didn't tell me her decision as to whom she would give the house, and I didn't ask her either. I was happy and satisfied with whatever Dad left for me. I'm not sure why Karen has not sued us when she was threatening us so aggressively. Probably because she doesn't have the required papers to proceed. Meanwhile, I followed up with a lawyer, and he said the property would be transferred to my name by next month. I'll make an update after that if possible. Thanks for bearing with me, and I appreciate all the love. Edit to add. A lot of you commented on why the will was kept in the closet and not in a bank locker. We live in the countryside with a safe, close-knit community. Unlike in the city, people here never had records of severe crimes or even thieves breaking into houses, so we never had any necessity for a bank locker. I know it might sound strange to city people, but this is a norm in countryside culture. Update 2. Thanks to everyone who has been regularly checking on me. I reply to everyone in chats and comments, but I was just not getting the time to make a detailed update. I had a lot to settle, and all of it took a while, but overall life has been better without getting into a lot of details. Let me give a quick rundown of what happened. After my last update, it took another 4 to 5 weeks for the ownership of the farm and windmill to be transferred to my name. Dad had a working agreement with all the workmen of his field and the windmill. All of it had to be updated. I took the time to learn how these things work. My mother helped me through it. She used to assist Dad and knew every detail about it. I asked Mom to take care of both the businesses until she wanted and keep the profit for herself. We made an agreement around it so that Karen doesn't create a problem in the future. Amidst all these, Mom got a letter of accusation from Karen's husband, where he accused Karen of running away with their ancestral heirloom jewelry and some thousand cash. Mom called him and found out that Karen was into gambling and lost a lot of her husband's money. When her husband denied her any further money, she got into debt, and now she ran away with cash and their ancestral jewelry. Mom asked him about her job, and he said she left her job long ago after her first kid. This makes us wonder where she was busy all this while when she never visited us and said she was busy at work. He said he would be sending the divorce papers soon to our place. Mom told him Karen wasn't here, so there was no point in sending it to us. He said he didn't know her whereabouts, so he had to send the papers to her parents' house. Not sure about the law in this sort of case where the wife has fled, but that's what he said. Mom told him about all the fuss she had created over Dad's will. Her husband wasn't aware that Karen got $100,000 in the will. He said Karen had told him that Dad gave everything to me and insisted he'd lend money so that she could sue us for forgery, but her husband didn't give the money. He said that maybe Karen had incurred considerable debts in gambling and would have used that $100,000 to pay it off. Isn't it so disgusting that she used Dad's hard-earned savings to save her ass from gambling loss? Karen didn't visit us after that. Mom tried calling her, but her number was either switched off or out of network. But a few days ago, she called Mom asking for money for some emergency reason. Mom asked her the reason, and she said her daughter met with an accident and her husband was out of town, and she needed urgent cash. It was all a lie. Mom told her that we know all the truth and that her husband has sent a legal notice that she had run away with his money and assets. She hung up the call and never called back. I think she has understood that now her malicious actions have been exposed, and she can no longer put a proud face in front of us. Amidst all these, my ex-husband, who left me for his colleague, has been making advances. We used to sometimes talk about the matter concerning our son, and now I see he indulges in comfortable talks with me, making me wonder how money can bring a lot more than you think. Anyways, I might cover this dynamics in a different thread, but thanks for all the love and support.